Well, over the last couple of weeks and really probably months, my son, who just turned 7, had kind of been complaining about not being able to see. He would tell me that things were blurry, but he would also tell me how much he liked his sister's glasses. And he would tell me how he thought it was cool to have glasses. And so there was always kind of this, okay, maybe this is why Kate's talking like this. But we had to take our daughter in to get an eye exam. We're going to transition her into contacts. And so we thought, okay, we'll go ahead and have an exam done on my son as well. And so Kate and I go into the room, and the girl begins to ask Kate to look at the wall and tell him the letters on the wall. And the girl has her back to me, and Kate is looking at me into a mirror that is reflecting the letters on the wall. And Kate has no idea what the letters are. And so it's like an E, and he's like O, and it's an M, and he says L. And I look at Kate, and I say, don't fake, right? It's one of those, like I can't say it too loud because I don't want the girl to hear me. And Kate's looking at me, and I'm like, don't fake. And he's like, I'm not. I'm like, don't fake, I'm not. And I was like, okay, well, keep going, and the letters get bigger, and then he begins to be able to read. Then I'm thinking, oh man, my son can't see. And so the doctor comes in and does some of the exams, and she says, yeah, Dad, he needs glasses. And I'm still kind of in that point, like, maybe Kate's just a good faker. Maybe he's just really good at this, and he really wants glasses. And so then the doctor, if you've ever been there, if you've ever got glasses, she goes to a drawer, and she pulls out the lenses. And so there's no frames, but she takes these lenses, and she tells Kate, buddy, this is what it's going to look like now that you can see. And so she takes these lenses, and she holds them over Kate's eyes. And Kate smiles really big and goes, oh, wow. And for me as a dad in that moment, I'm thinking, I've questioned this, but right there was this response of Kate to be able to see clearly. Right? It changed everything, and we got the glasses for him, and he has them on. It's just amazing to watch him look out and to be able to see. So this morning, we're going to talk about, hopefully, the power of the church. And as we talk about this, I hope you'll be able to see clearly some things. That maybe some things have been blurry. Maybe you thought that that's what it was to look like. But I really hope this morning, as we look at this account in the book of Acts, that something's going to click and something's going to resonate with us, and we'll see clearly. No matter how long you've been a follower of Jesus, maybe you're just investigating what it means to follow Jesus. So as we look at this, I hope you're encouraged and inspired. But then there's going to be a part of it that I hope is extremely challenging to many of us. And we're going to have to ask ourselves a difficult question. So we're going to look at Acts 5, starting in verse 12. Acts, if you don't know, is the Acts of the Apostles. The Acts of the early church, kind of how the early church started. It was written by a guy named Luke. Luke was a doctor, wrote the Gospel of Luke. One of the things I love reading about Luke is being a doctor. He gives details maybe other people didn't give. And so as you read the Gospel of Luke and you read the miracles, you'll begin to see that. This is vital to us as followers of Jesus because it's really the only account, one of the only accounts we have is how the church started, how it grew, how it reached into the Roman Empire. And then it starts with this hodgepodge group of people, right? Just starts with this hodgepodge group of people, and over a short period of time, the church grows tremendously into several thousand. So let's read Acts 5, 12 through 16. If you don't have a Bible, there should be a Bible around you somewhere. Please take that. That's our gift to you. You can take that home, write in it, do whatever you would like to do. So let's read Acts 5. I'll read it out loud. It says, the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders among the people. And all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. As a result, people brought the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and mats, so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on some of them as he passed by. Crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by evil spirits, and all of them were healed. So two things I want to look at today. Number one, the church is the ongoing work of Jesus. All right? The church is the ongoing work of Jesus. When you read apostles here, what they're saying is the church. The early church is they are the ones who are doing these. They're doing these amazing things. They're performing miracles, and everything they're doing is pointing to Jesus. The early church, everything they're doing is pointing to Jesus. And people are coming to believe in Jesus, and they're being healed. They're being healed of all kinds of different things. People have heard what's going on, and they're recognizing their miracles. And the thought is, if I could just be near to the church, think about that. If I could just be near the apostles, near the church, things are happening, and I want to be there, and I'm going to bring my sick to the church. I'm going to bring those who need to be healed to the church. So much so, they think if we could just get in the shadow of Peter. I don't understand that. But there was just this thought, if we could just get near to Peter, just his shadow might touch us. If his shadow would touch us, maybe we would find healing. In Jesus' time, there was a point where this woman was sick, and her thought was, if I could just touch the garment of Jesus. So if I could just be near to Jesus, I would find healing. And so these people are just thinking, I want to be near to the apostles, this early church. And so these crowds are gathering. They're coming from all over to be near the early church. Now, if we look in Luke 6, so the Gospel of Luke, same writer, he's writing and talking about this account of Jesus. And it's going to sound very familiar. Listen to this. Luke 6, verse 17. It says, he, Jesus, went down with them and stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples were there, and a great number of people from all of Judea, from Jerusalem, and from the coast of Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by evil spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming from him and healing them all. It sounds very familiar. It sounds very familiar that the way that Jesus lived his life and what Jesus was doing was the same thing that the early church was doing. That the church looked like Jesus. And so we see that these exciting things are happening. Jesus is being preached, and healing is happening. And so I want to point out just in this point that the church is the continuing work of Jesus, that there's two things I want to point out to us that I think are really vital for us to understand. And the first one is the one that I want you to see clearly. Okay, this is very important. And if you've been around this place, you've heard me say this before. But the church is not a building. Okay, this is important. The church is not a building, but it's a group of people who gather together to live out the mission of Jesus. The church is not a building, but a group of people. It's the whole group of Christians who are scattered throughout the church, throughout the world. They are the church. So I didn't grow up in church, but I remember when I was young, I heard this little thing. Maybe you've seen me do this before, but you might want to do this with me. So I think you do it like this, and what is it? Here's the church, right? So here's the church, and here's the steeple, and you open it up, and here's all the people. That's wrong. It's wrong. It's actually bad theology. Theology, the study of Jesus, it's wrong. So if you've taught your kids this, let's change it. All right? So let's start over. So this is just a building. Right? This is just a building, and there's a steeple on the building, and you open up the building, and there is the church. Right? This thing we're in is a church building, if you want to call it that. And so we don't go to church. You may have even said today to someone, yeah, I'm going to go to church in the morning, and then I have other plans afterwards. You don't go to church. You have to see clearly, you are the church. You're the church, not a building. There's a group of our kids right now who are upstairs. They're learning about Jesus, and they're going to do some fun stuff. They're the church. Right? Our junior high and high school students right now, they're on a mission trip to Waco, Texas. They're really immersing themselves into homelessness. They're not just serving, but they're beginning to learn about the cycles of homelessness and of poverty and how to really help people out of that. This morning, they are participating in a service under a bridge. No building, probably no fancy PR system, PA system. They are in an outside area under a bridge, experiencing community with one another and worshiping God together. They're the church. Right now, the church is meeting together underneath a bridge. Those who are spending the weekend away right now, who are enjoying family and are enjoying the outdoors weekend, they're the church. It's not just when we enter into this building. It's not just something we go to or that we gather in a few times a week. You, all of you, if you are a follower of Jesus, you're the church. So we have to begin to see clearly that it's not just a place that we go to. Listen to the words of Jesus in Matthew 16. He says this. He's talking to a guy named Peter. He says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Listen, he's not telling Peter, hey, on you, I'm going to build a building. It's not what he's saying. He's saying, on you, I'm going to start this movement of people who live out the mission of Jesus. And look, nothing's going to overcome it. Not even hell itself is going to overcome the church. And so he says, I'm going to build it. Who's going to build it? Jesus is going to build his church. You and me. We are the church. And then the second part of this is the church is not made up of perfect people. Right? Some of you know that. And I may be speaking to some people who watch this online, but some people have actually said, and I've heard this, right? I'm going to use the language they would use. I can't come to church because I'm just trying to figure some things out. Right? I can't come to church because I don't want to be seen as a hypocrite. I can't come to church until my family gets healthier. I can't come to church because I just have some things I struggle with. There's things that are keeping me from coming to church. Look, this is a misunderstanding of the role of the church. We don't clean ourselves up to come to God. Right? We don't get to a point where we work really hard and we think, oh, now I'm presentable to God. That's not how it works. I don't know if any of you have the ability to hire a cleaning lady. My mom cleans houses for a living. And so my mom will tell me there's a few houses she cleans, and there's one that will take about 12 hours to clean. And the family, they don't do anything to prepare for my mom to come. No dishes over a week. I mean, everything just kind of piles up, and my mom comes in and does everything, right? More than she probably needs to. But then I know some people, you might know some people, who clean their house before the cleaning lady comes, right? You vacuum, you dust, you wipe down the bathroom, right? Because we don't want the cleaning lady to see how dirty we are, right? We have to clean before the cleaning. People think that, I believe. Let me get cleaned up. Let me get good enough, and then I'll present myself to Jesus. This isn't the early church. These guys who are following Jesus, these people who are on the movement and the mission of Jesus, have not got it all figured out. Peter, the one they said, I'm going to build my church on you. Not too long after that, Peter denies even knowing Jesus. Jesus is at the worst part of his life. He's facing death, and Peter says, I don't even know that guy. I wasn't even with him. And this is the one that Jesus is going to build the church on. And so the church, even though it's full of broken people, and it is full of broken people, it is a beautiful thing. Listen, even though the church is a group of broken, messed up, hurting people, it is a beautiful thing. And the reason it's a beautiful thing is because Jesus' Spirit moves in us. It has nothing to do with you, it has nothing to do with me. It is a beautiful and powerful thing because of Jesus and Jesus alone, and because of his Spirit. And so we get to be a part of this. We get to be the ones who, hopefully, with the way we live our lives and what we do, we are bringing healing to people. We get to play a part in what God is doing. And so when we think about this, we're either a conduit for God's grace or a barrier for it. We are either a conduit for God's grace or we are a barrier for it. And so you have to understand that everywhere you go, you are the church. It's a little pressure. But everywhere you go, you are the church. And so if you call yourself a Christian, you are the church. And so what happens when others come in contact with the church? What happens when others come in contact with you at home? Or at your job? Or at the grocery store? Or when you leave here and we rush out and we get to the restaurant? What happens there when people encounter the church? I used to wait tables at an Applebee's. And the other waiters, when I was in college, the other waiters did not like the Sunday crowd. They talked about how they were demanding, inconsiderate, cheap, didn't tip well. These are the words I would hear them say. That's a problem. Because it's not that we're here and we're the church because we're meeting in a building, but everywhere you go, the Spirit of God is with you and you are the church. So students at your school, in our city, everywhere we go, is there hope and peace and joy and patience? Are we showing other the ways of God where people want to be in contact with us? Right? Because that's how people are finding healing in this story in Acts. It didn't happen from a distance. It happened because they came in contact with the church. So let me just say something, and this is a little difficult, but we often talk really poorly about millennials. Millennials are, I'm on the edge of being a millennial, and so early 80s, those born in the 80s, 90s millennials, they're our young adults right now. There's often a poor way of speaking to about our millennials. And there's this discussion that millennials are out of the church, and I'm thankful that for us here, we have a lot of young adults who are a part of Trinity. But the problems we see with the millennials, I just have to admit, I'm not sure it's their fault. They were not raised, they were raised by those of us, by many of you. And for many millennials, they didn't see Jesus lived out in a way where it made sense. They didn't see a church who confessed one thing on Sundays and in a building and then looked differently outside of this place. We have to do some work. The church has to do some work to understand that we play a role in this. We play a role in helping other people see who God is. And so we have to begin to work really hard at this, to understand that you are the church and that I am the church. And so the early apostles, the early church, people came in contact and they found healing, physical healing, but it was more than just that. And so for us, we pray for physical healing. We see that in some people. We're going to continue to pray for that. But there's other healing that takes place by being in contact with the church. Healing from our past, emotional healing, relational healing, spiritual healing. This takes place when other people are in contact with the church and we understand that we are the continuing work of Jesus. And then we have to really understand how powerful the work of the church can be. The difference that the church can make. And so my kids get their eyes checked, and I didn't realize this, but they had their eyes dilated. So I've never had my eyes dilated before, but my son, who's 7, and my 11-year-old daughter have their eyes dilated. We leave, they get the stuff that they need, and they walk out the door, and both of them immediately cover their eyes and begin to scream. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? And so I then realized, I remembered seeing them put drops in their eyes. The light was so strong, they could not open their eyes. And so I'm walking them across the parking lot, and I kind of get my daughter to where she's okay and she can go around the door. And I think my son is good where he's at. And so I let go of his hand to open the door. And the next thing I know, Cade runs into the side of our car, and he hits his mouth. And so now Cade can't see, and now he's crying. And I'm the dad of the year. And so we get through this. But the light was just so strong. It was overwhelming to them. I've never had my eyes dilated, but my daughter's explaining just how the white stripes on the parking lot just overwhelmed her. Yeah. Jesus at one point says that he's the light of the world. He then says, you are the light of the world. Jesus isn't confused here. What he's saying is when Jesus is in you, when the Spirit of God is in you, you are the light of the world, and it has the potential to overwhelm people in a good way, to change lives and make a difference. Just really quickly, we're a part of a denomination called the Nazarene denomination. Some of you may not even know that. That might be new to you. If you have questions, I'd love to have that conversation. But every 4 years, we have a gathering of Nazarenes. And so in Indianapolis, just over the last 2 weeks, thousands of people from around the world gathered together. There's meetings and there's worship. There's a thought that there's about 30,000 people who gathered on Sunday for worship from really all over the world. And then we have these people who are elected called general superintendents. A friend of mine who's a pastor in Kentucky, he called them like popes without the funny hats. So they kind of oversee our denomination worldwide. We are a worldwide denomination. Actually, most of our large gatherings of people, our churches, are not even in the U.S. They're in other places, and so we are a worldwide denomination. And we did some amazing things. We elected Dr. Chambo from South Africa to help oversee our denomination. We elected a female who also is going to help oversee our denomination, Dr. Summer. And so we are incredibly excited about what the church is doing. That the church, the Nazarene church, what we're doing right here, this isn't the church complete. I mean, it's all over the world. We made an extremely important resolution, and I want to read this to you. Mainly because this is where we're at, and this is one of the things we're fighting for here in North County. We are working towards trying to do this even better, but we made a statement that I think is extremely important for you to hear. That the Church of the Nazarene made this statement. This is what it says. It says, "We renounce any form of racial and ethnic indifference, exclusion, subjugation, or oppression as a grave sin against God and our fellow human beings. We lament the legacy of every form of racism throughout the world, and we seek to confront that legacy through repentance, reconciliation, and biblical justice. We seek to repent every behavior in which we have been overtly or covertly complicit with the sin of racism, both past and present. And in confession and lament, we seek forgiveness and reconciliation. Further, we acknowledge that there is no reconciliation apart from human struggle to stand against and to overcome all personal, institutional, and structural prejudice responsible for racial and ethnic humiliation and oppression. We call upon Nazarenes everywhere, it's us, to identify and to seek, to remove acts and structures of prejudice, to facilitate occasions for seeking forgiveness and reconciliation, and to take action toward empowering those who have been marginalized." This is good stuff. This is the church being the light. This should have probably happened years and years and years and years and years and years ago. But I'm thankful that we have made this statement, that this is powerful, that the church makes statements like this, that we live out what we believe to be true about God. We raised over $100,000 in the assembly to give to Syrian refugees, to give to Nazarene Compassion Ministries who are serving refugees around the world. This is amazing. This is the work of the church doing what the church is supposed to do. That the church is powerful and it makes a difference. And like I said before, it's you. It's not a building. It's not a place that you go to. You are the church. Now the difficult part. Now there's this statement. I was talking to a pastor friend of mine the other day who was telling me about this scripture. And once he read it to me and was talking to me about it, I've been just thinking about it for the last couple of weeks. And this is the statement that sticks out in chapter 5. It's verse 13. It says this: "No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people." So the church is doing great things. People are being healed. Differences are being made in people's lives. But then there's this statement that there's a group of people who didn't dare join them. They didn't dare be a part of what was going on. Even though they were highly regarded, they weren't sure they wanted to be a part of that. Now, this is what it would have meant to be a part of them. The original language would have meant to fasten themselves to them, to cement themselves to them, to join together. And if they were to do that, there was a cost that would be paid. They would have to pay the cost. There would be opposition and resistance. There would be a suffering that would take place. There would be a persecution to what they were saying about Jesus. If you want, you can go and you can read through the book of Acts, and you can read the persecution that takes place of the early church. And the others see this, and they're thinking, man, that's great that that's happening. I love that people are being healed. I'm just not sure I can jump in. I'm not sure I can fully be involved in what's going on. I don't know if I can get through my fears. And so they didn't dare to join in. Listen, in Acts 5, just not long after this is why they were afraid to join in. It says this: his speech persuaded them in Acts 5, verse 40. They called the apostles, they called the church in and had them flogged. They had them beat. Then they ordered them not to speak in the name of Jesus, and they let them go. They beat them and they say, don't ever talk about Jesus again, or this is going to happen again and again and again. Verse 41, the apostles, the church, left the Sanhedrin, rejoicing because they have been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. Day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah. That was a cost that was to be paid. It was difficult, and there were people who were like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can pay that cost. The church is growing like crazy. At one point, there's 3,000, and it says that people are being added daily, and then they're to 5,000, but a small group of people are participating in what God is doing. And I think what we have to see here is that they were actually missing out. There was still a cost that was being paid by not joining in and what was happening. They were missing out on the mission and the movement of God. Peter and Andrew, at one point, they're fishing. And the reason they're fishing is because they hadn't passed the classes they need to pass to follow a rabbi and to be a spiritual leader. And so they were sent off to go and be with their father. And so they're off fishing, and Jesus comes along and he invites Peter and Andrew to come and follow him. Come and follow. I know you've been fishing for fish, but now you're going to fish for men. You're going to make a difference. You're going to do what I've been doing. And the response of these two people, these fishermen, is they leave their nets. They walk away from everything. They walk away from a secure future of fishing with their father. They even walk away from their family in a way. And they go to follow Jesus. They were willing to surrender everything, to pay the price to follow Jesus. It was worth it to them. Now, I think for us in the U.S., when we think about this and counting the cost, it looks much different than it does in other places around the world. There are many of our Nazarene churches that we don't even know about. They can't tell people where they're at because they're facing persecution. There's underground churches, there's secret churches, these gatherings of people who are still gathering together even though they're in fear of their lives. Not too long ago, the Egyptian Christians, I don't know if you've stayed connected to that and listened to that, but the Egyptian Christians are just being murdered. Just at the beginning of June, a busload of Egyptian Coptic Christians are on a bus going to a monastery to pray, and they were attacked. 30 killed, at least 26 wounded, women, children, men, because they're Christians. And if you read the quotes of these people on the bus, how they're praying for the forgiveness of these shooters, it's powerful. It's powerful, but they're facing persecution, and they've counted the cost, and they say it's worth it. Now, for us, the cost looks different. As American Christians, I think one thing we have to kind of surrender and to give up is the American dream. And this is difficult, and this is, 4th of July weekend, but I just have to be honest. The American dream really often goes countercultural to what Jesus stood for and what Jesus does. The American dream of just making more money, of being successful, the right house, the right car, long life, and be blessed. Right? We concern ourselves with ourselves only most of the time, without care for many of our neighbors who are suffering, who are hurting. And now the church, many of you, that may not be true. But there's a cost that's to be paid. Jesus talks about it kind of like this, that we're going to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Whatever you would want for yourselves is what you want for your neighbors. That you would live lives of generosity, that you'd fight for justice, that you'd give a voice for those who have not been given a voice, that we would love our enemies, that we would truly love sacrificially, and this often goes against the American dream. So there is a cost to be paid even for us. And some of that cost comes in giving up of your time. We protect our time, we worship our time. Time can become an idol. And so the cost for many of us is our resources. It's our time. And we surrender our time and we invest it in things that matter. We sometimes choose to do less for ourselves to be able to do more for others. We've had hundreds of hours of time given to our kids this summer to feed them lunch. That many teachers who have this chance to be off and not be with kids have given their time to serve kids lunch. Many of them I know are followers of Jesus. We give our energy and our talents. We give our money. We give ourselves to something bigger than who we are. And that's a cost. Maybe our comfort. Jesus is not after us being comfortable, but for us to conform ourselves to the ways of Jesus. That's what he is after. And so sometimes it means giving up our own security and our own comfort. It might cost us relationally. People might begin to question, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. Why do you do that? People begin to question if it's real in your life. Maybe people don't want anything to do with you because you've walked away from certain things. But the question is, would you dare to join in? As we read this and we see the movement of the church, think about what's happening. People are being healed just with the shadow of Peter. There's people like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can give up stuff and join in and be a part of what is going on. Would you dare to join in? In just two ways, really quickly. I think sometimes we can err and we think what happens in this place is not an opportunity to love one another. We talk a lot about loving those outside of these walls. We talk a lot about serving the least of these. But look, the church, you, me, we're a family. So we take care of each other. We provide for one another. We see a need and we step up. But that's not just outside of this place. That's here as well. And so we have kids who would love to have adults who would pour into their lives. Maybe one Sunday every 2 months. It's going to be a cost. You don't get to be in here. It might be hectic because they're kids. But would you really pray about and think about participating in what's going on in the life of our children's ministry? Now, if you're a parent, we don't let just anybody work with our kids. Lots of background checks, a certain amount of time they have to be here. But many of you have been here for a long time. Many of you would do an incredible job loving our kids. Count the cost and participate. Or our students, our junior high and high school students, greeting people, welcoming people into this place, using your gifts and talents through worship. As we look into the fall of starting a few small groups, specifically over a few topics, would you just begin to pray and say, okay, well, how am I going to participate fully? How am I going to join in what God is doing here on Sundays and Wednesdays? Would you consider that? And then maybe some of you are fully engaged here, but then outside of this place, you feel like you haven't joined in. Where are you gifted? Where are you talented? What passions do you have? And then ask yourself, how do those intersect with the needs of our community? Maybe you don't know how to use those. Come talk to me. I don't know if I have find any more joy than finding someone who has gifts and talents and then plugging them into a certain area that makes a difference for other people. What is that for you? There's a cost in that. There's a cost to your time and your resources and your energy. Do you dare join in? Do you dare join in what God is doing around us? Well, Greg's going to come up and we're going to end with this song that we end our services with, this benediction, this prayer, this declaration of what we want in our lives. And as we sing this, would you just think, just in these few moments as Greg comes up, would you begin to see that the church is more than a building? That you are the church. Everywhere you go, the church is with you. That's not just something you spend a few hours doing, but you have the opportunity and the invitation and the power to make a difference. And then would you dare to join in? Would you dare to join into the mission and the movement of what Jesus is doing here in our community? Would you stand? I'll pray, and we'll sing together. God, thank you for today. Thanks for your grace and your love that even allows us to be here today. That none of this happens on our own merit, that our own goodness doesn't bring us into this place. We come broken, we come messed up. You are the one who is good and not us. And so God, I pray that you would encourage many of the people here today who feel like they even need to clean up before being here. God, you're the one that works in our lives. You're the one that changes our hearts. You're the one that heals us of addictions. You're the one that heals us in our relationships. And so, Lord, I pray that we would understand that and that we are the church. Would you use us to continue to do great things here within these walls and outside? Lord, we join in. We want to join in and be a part of what you're doing today. I pray this in Jesus' name.